So, friends, we're recording this episode the morning after our live first anniversary party, just a few days ago. And I admit I'm feeling it, and we're going to find out in a minute if Dennis is feeling it. But it was a great time. Wonderful, wonderful people, friends, some strangers as well, coming out in support. I mean, it wasn't that the party was so wild and crazy. I mean, there were plenty of good tidings, if you know what I mean. But it wasn't like some rager from our 20s. It's just that it made me stay up past my bedtime. You know what I mean if you're like us on the back nine. Dennis,
Buddy, what's your bedtime? Wait a second, because I know what time you were at my place, so I know what time. It wasn't really that late.
it was not that late. What is my normal bedtime?
Yeah.
I am usually in bed. Don't judge me, friends. I'm usually in bed in the 9 o'clock hour, and not usually, and not much later than that. It's such different from when we were sportscasting and up until midnight just doing work.
Yeah. On the 11 o'clock news back
Yeah.
when that was a thing. Yeah. I mean, we watched the first half of the game. I stayed up a little longer and watched a little more of the Detroit Green Bay game.
Yeah.
That was
what was on.
Yeah, that was what was on. But yeah, it leads me to YouTube. I just had flashbacks of like times in my 20s when, I mean, we're joking about the
Yeah.
party. It was nothing. We didn't stay out late, but
But it was a lot of energy because of the
there
show.
was a lot of
energy.
energy. And we had that good Bushwood bourbon, which was very good. Janine had some of that.
But just I mean, not even a full shot. I mean, they were like a third shot.
Well,
or half
I
shots.
shared it with a few other people when you weren't looking, so I
Okay.
might have had more than a.
Did you have? I mentioned the Ragers from our 20s. Do you have one that stands out?
I have way more than one, but I could give you one.
Well, give me your best.
Okay, this might be my best. A couple other of them were popping into my mind. When I was 23 years old, I was in Orlando, your hometown. We used to go to
My
Orlando.
home. That's where I live now.
Your
My
hometown now. You
Chicago
lived
guy.
there a long time.
Yes.
Your current hometown.
Yes.
So we would go there. It was like my childhood from like 16 on. We go on golf trips. My dad would take me. We had timeshares. We would just go play golf. So I'm fairly freshly out of college. And one of my old college fraternity brothers is with me on the trip. And Mike and I are down at the time, Church Street Station was a thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's much, is it? It's gone in
not
waves.
the same. Yeah.
Anyways, it was a really good party area. And I was there for my 23rd birthday. And we got into it, and the dads left. This was before cell phones, before like you had any way to get in touch with anybody.
Yeah.
So early 90s. So we're basically trapped at Church Street Station. The bars all close. We are blind, like blind. We don't want to bother my dad and my uncle back at the place. You know, like they got to come. Where we were staying was probably 35, 40 minutes away. There's no Uber. There's no way to get home. There's no cabs anymore at this point. So we're like, what the F are we going to do?
Yeah.
Right. So he's like under the underpass, and we're like, I guess we could just sleep here, like homeless people. We were going to sleep under the underpass and hope they came and got us in the morning. I don't know what we were thinking. He goes, and we're so lucky. You're like 9 lives. He goes up to the highway, and he's trying to flag down tractor trailers to try and take us. He's like on the side of the road
my
trying
God.
to flag down tractor trailers to take us the right way on Route 4. So that doesn't work out. Eventually, I think we got them on a payphone or something, and they did come out and pick us up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So the next day, we got to get up early to play golf. You know how these things
yeah.
were. You just stayed up late and then went and played golf in the morning, and whatever sleep you got. So we're on our way to the course, and I don't know if he got sick or whatever, but my buddy Mike just kept saying, "I'm hurting. I'm hurting." So my dad, to this day, his name was Mike Kosicki. If anybody's hurting, he goes, "Where's the Mike Kosicki doll where you pull the cord and it goes, I'm hurting?"
That's fantastic.
That's my
I
dad
love
still
it.
has that story.
We need to get Mike. I don't know him, a T-shirt that says that. If he
I'm
hasn't already.
hurting.
So I had one. You're not going to be surprised. It was in Vegas. I was there for a bachelor party, and as it happened, a good friend of mine from college was also there, and you've met my friend Paul, and he at the time was he was in big New York City finance, and the kind of guys that would work 100 to 120 hour weeks for weeks at a time on projects, and then they would go on 5, 6, 7 day complete benders, if not also, or on a big trip somewhere. So he happened to be out there with a bunch of his guys on a bender, and I ended up hooking up with him and his buddies, and we went hard, and substances were consumed, and we ended up at Dre's. And anybody who knows Dre's knows that that's the famous late night club in Vegas, still going, and anybody who is there is on something, as were we. And we stumble out of this club, at 7:30, 8 in the morning, and nobody is on the streets. And I bumped into a guy a guy we were covering who had played for the Buffalo Bills. Also, it was not their season, it was off season. And it's like February or March. And so it's 8 in the morning, right? And last night I couldn't stay up much past 8 at night. That's how things change on the back nine.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you do know someday on the show, I'll dig into my best story, which is when I was traveling as the intermission host with the Sabres. I have several from those years of when I was on the road with the Sabres back in 96, 97 season. And I have one in particular in Vancouver that is just out of control. So I'll have to tell that at some point.
And Vancouver is one of my favorite cities. It's a great drinking
From
town.
what I can remember.
It's such a beautiful city. It's really pretty. The ocean, the mountains just come exploding out of the ocean.
They just made a mistake because they gave the guys, it was 2 nights in between games. So there's like that first night there. And it just became like mayhem. And this was a young team and the guys were, it was...
Yeah. Well, things we have a different perspective, and we're reminiscing about things that have passed. We reminisced
front nine stuff.
Yeah. Front nine stuff. And Year One of the Podcast stuff. Not that we partied like that in Year One of the Podcast, but today is making the turn, and we're turning the page into Year 2 of the Back Nine and Season 6 of the Back Nine. And it's really exciting. Before we push all the way forward, I think we're informed by the lessons of Year One. And for me, it was just how much we learned in Year One. And so that position as we go into Year 2 is how much I am looking forward to learning more.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we created this to be a platform, to be a voice, to help people through middle age in the second half of their life. And it's turned into, in some ways, therapy for us. There's lots of things that I'm learning, and the episodes that we've already done for this upcoming season are so different than anything we've done. I can honestly say that. I mean, some of our such stuff in Year One was similar. We had some things that we weave through, but these first episodes that we put together for the beginning of the season are very different, to the extent that we have 2 people very much on their front nine, very, very much on their front nine coming up after the new year, and so wise beyond their years. And all of us, no matter what age, can learn something from both these guys.
Absolutely. I think it's also interesting that in the episodes that we've already recorded here for Season 6, how much emphasis, and maybe this is the time of year that we're in, we're recording this in late December, the notion of relationships, right? I mean, we had one of the guests that we're going to have coming up in the next couple of weeks, in fact, next week, what we brought her on to talk about was not about relationships. But we ended up talking a lot about relationships. And I'm so excited about letting everybody else hear that episode, because some of the wisdom and some of the perspectives I think are really informative for guys like us, and especially for what women are looking for from guys like us.
And then we've got, that'll be Christmas Eve. We've got a New Year's Eve edition. And one of the things that we've been very intentional about is the relationship thing for that episode. We wanted to give our listeners sort of a bookend for the first one we ever did, which was Dating After Divorce, the first podcast we ever did. This one is Dating in the New Year. And there's just some really compelling stuff from a host of a very popular podcast called The Great Love Debate. And Brian Howie, who you're going to want to hear from, he's terrific. The episode will be somewhat, maybe there'll be some things that are a little bit controversial that you don't agree with, but they're thought-provoking.
They are. And what's great about it is I think a lot of it is with a kind of from a heteronormative perspective, and especially for people in middle age. But I think as we broke it down, there were lessons that can cross gender lines, that can cross age lines, that can cross gender of your partner lines, that can cross different kinds of personalities and what people bring to relationships, how they get into relationships, what they want out of relationships. So I think it's going to be interesting that some of Season 6, the beginning of Year 2, is going to be relationship focused, and interesting because you're completely off the market.
Yeah, it was a big year.
Yeah,
I think as we look back, 2024 will always be, as I continue on the back nine, a very memorable year. I think about starting this podcast. I think about building up and all the planning that went into the wedding, which we've talked plenty about on the show, but it's just an enormous year. And again, we've talked about the things that have been important to us over the last year in this show. And as we look towards Season 6, and for me, man, have we made a lot of new friends. we've made a lot of new friends through this show, and we've rekindled relationship with old friends. And it's astonishing how big our network has grown.
Yes. And with those new friends come a lot of new perspectives and fresh perspectives, and new perspectives and fresh perspectives from old friends too, right? The really getting to be in this space. And I hope you out there in the audience feel this way too, that these topics that we're talking about, even in 25 or 30 minutes or 35 or 40 minutes, as some of our podcasts have gotten a little bit longer, that we're able to explore things in a space that feels very comfortable to be able to talk about them, that allow us to consider things that in our busy daily lives, our distracted lives, we're not able to sit with. We've been able to do that every week. I hope those of you who are listening have been able to do that most weeks, to allow those conversations to sink in and challenge the way that you've thought about things or the way that you've acted towards things. I know it has for me, and I think it has for you too.
It definitely has. And I love the impact that this has had on the people that will text us and be like, gosh, I listened to that episode and it was really good. Or I'm listening to your live show, or all the different connections that come from it and the impact that the community's having. But I'll take it a step further. It took a podcast for me to realize this, but maybe for you, the listener, it doesn't take a podcast. You don't have to host a podcast. You can create a bigger community yourself. You can reach out to friends that you haven't reached out to in the new year. You can connect with people that you haven't connected with in a while. You can make new friends. These are all things that you can do outside the walls of a podcast. We've been fortunate to be able to do this. It's a platform that we're comfortable with, but it's kind of a lesson of life that our listeners can embark on in the new year.
We specifically targeted that objective for men on the back nine when we started this in late 2023. I think over 2024, we learned that it is a message, these topics, the ability to have these conversations should be at a variety of ages and should be men, women, transgender, whatever. Feel free to talk about these things and feel safe talking about them. So hopefully you at home feel that way as well. And you can share these episodes with people that you want to talk about these things with, because that's the goal here, is to create this space where people are able to put words to vocalize the things that are on their minds.
So as we head into this holiday season, I just have a ton of gratitude. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for our listeners. Everybody's around. This is right before the holidays really kick into gear. What's your favorite part of the holidays?
What is my favorite part of the holidays?
This season.
This coming up, I think it's going to be the chance to visit. Mine are going to be extended because I'm not going to be able to see my daughters until after the holidays, but we have the dates set for that. And so I'm going to get like 3 weeks of being with different parts of my family at different times. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to knowing that there are some really big things ahead of us in terms of what we're building here. How about with you?
Well, our listeners don't know this. We did the ceremony on St. John on the 17th of November. We did a small cocktail reception in November, right after Thanksgiving, with my family on Cape Cod.
Where you're from, yeah.
So Rebecca's from Buffalo. At Christmas on December 29th. We'll have a cocktail party with friends and family up in Buffalo to celebrate. So it'll be the celebration continues of the marriage. And we're going to get to do it because we had such a small island wedding. Excuse me. We're going to get to do this with our extended families in each of those towns. And you know how near and dear Buffalo is to me. I lived there for 15 years. So there'll be some of our old friends will be there, Petey and Bull and the whole crew. So some of those guys, John. So we'll have some friends that you know there too. So I'm really looking forward to that. I always cook on Christmas Eve for the family. So I'll be making my traditional Christmas Eve dinner as well. So it's just going to be an amazing week. It's the longest I will have spent in Buffalo in a really long time. We'll be up there for 6 full days. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
We'll see how the weather cooperates. I'll be frozen by the time I get back, Janine. I hope I can still function here. But yeah, just looking forward to the holidays.
Well, we wish all of you a similar opportunity in your holiday seasons, a lot of good tidings. We're grateful for all of you who listen. Grateful, Janine, to you and to Olivia and to Tom and to Roy and everyone else on the staff and to all the folks here in the studios that we work in, and to you, brother. It's been really fun sharing the journey with you. And there's so much coming up ahead. And it all starts next week on Christmas Eve with episode 10 of season 6 of The Back Nine. We'll see you then.